The diner sat beneath a flickering neon sign just off I-95 in a Virginia town most people skipped without noticing. It was the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths, an old jukebox playing forgotten tunes, and a waitress named Tammy who knew how to pour coffee without asking questions. Lieutenant General Alexander Ramsey had no plans to stop there, but after 6 hours behind the wheel and a skipped lunch, his stomach overruled his schedule. He was heading to Fort Bragg for a classified briefing, one that only a handful of people in the country even knew about. He needed 30 quiet minutes, a hot meal, and a stretch before getting back on the road. Alexander pulled his government-issued sedan into the small gravel lot behind the diner. He climbed out, adjusting the collar of his dark blue service uniform, the polished silver stars on his shoulders catching the low light. A long row of ribbons lined his chest, each one earned in places few civilians had even heard of. His hair, steel gray and closely cropped, was a signal in itself. Disciplined, experienced, and unshakably composed. He was a tall man, imposing even without effort, but his presence didn't scream for attention. It commanded it quietly. Inside the diner, truckers and locals looked up as the bell above the door jingled. A young boy pointed at his medals, eyes wide, before his mother hushed him with a smile. Alexander nodded politely and slid into a corner booth, ordered a cheeseburger and a black coffee, and checked his phone. An email from the Joint Chiefs. A text from his wife, Lena, safe drive? Don't skip dinner. Love you. Outside in the parking lot, 2 patrol officers leaned against their cruiser under a burnt-out lamppost. Officer Craig Dalton, stocky and sweat-stained, flicked his cigarette and squinted toward the diner. His younger partner, Officer Kevin Maddox, was halfway through a bottle of Mountain Dew, legs crossed on the bumper. That's a fancy ride, Dalton muttered, eyeing the black sedan. Military tags. Maddox followed his gaze. Yeah. Wonder who that guy thinks he is. Playing dress-up. Dalton smirked. Probably bought the uniform online. 3 stars? In this dump. They didn't run the plates. Didn't radio it in. They just watched. Inside, Tammy refilled Alexander's coffee. You passing through, sir? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Just grabbing a bite before heading south. She smiled. Well, you picked the right spot. Try the peach pie if you have room. He returned the smile. Thanks. I'll think about it. He ate slowly, savoring the food. No one bothered him. The place hummed with quiet energy. But outside, the officers were growing restless. Dalton pushed off the cruiser with a grunt, muttering something under his breath. Maddox followed. Alexander finished his meal, left a generous tip, and slid his wallet into his inner coat pocket. As he stepped outside, the night air hit him cool, dry, silent. He walked toward his car with the unhurried rhythm of someone who had seen too much to ever be surprised by anything. Hey! A voice barked behind him. Stop right there. Alexander turned slowly, his right hand halfway to his keys. The flashlight beam hit him square in the face. Officer Dalton's voice came again, sharp, hostile. Hands where I can see them. Alexander raised his hands, palms out, his voice calm. Evening, officers. Everything okay? Dalton stepped forward, shining the light directly at Alexander's chest. That's a hell of a costume you got on, sir. Alexander blinked through the glare. It's not a costume. Maddox joined him, circling like a dog scenting something unfamiliar. You claiming you're a general? Yes. Lieutenant General Alexander Ramsey. United States Army. Dalton scoffed. Got ID? I do, Alexander said, slowly reaching for his wallet. Left pocket. I'm going to take it out now. Slow, Dalton snapped. Real slow. Alexander complied, withdrawing his wallet with 2 fingers and handing it over. Maddox took it, flipped through the contents, then shrugged. Looks real. Still could be fake. Dalton snorted. You don't look like any general I've ever seen. Alexander met his eyes. And how many black generals have you met, officer? That stopped them both for a second. Dalton's jaw tightened. Don't get smart with me. I'm not. I'm asking. Dalton's hand hovered near his holster. Maddox looked nervous now, glancing at the windows of the diner. A couple of patrons had stepped outside, phones in hand, recording silently. Tammy stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You got a lot of nerve, Dalton said. We're verifying this. If you're lying, call Fort Bragg. Ask for Colonel Dana Mercer. She'll verify who I am. Maddox laughed short and sharp. We're not calling your friends. Hands on the car. Now. Alexander didn't move. I'm not resisting. But you have no grounds to detain me. That was the moment. Dalton's pride couldn't take it. He grabbed Alexander's arm, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him against the hood of the car. The cuffs came next cold, too tight, unforgiving. You're under arrest, Dalton hissed. Impersonating a military officer. Resisting. Alexander didn't resist. He just said, evenly, my phone's in my right pocket. Call the number marked Pentagon, or you're going to regret this. Dalton shoved him into the back of the cruiser. Back at the Greendale Police Department, Alexander sat handcuffed in a grimy interview room, a stain on the table in front of him, the ceiling light flickering like an old bulb refusing to die. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Just waited. Dalton paced. Maddox leaned in the corner, fiddling with his phone. They joked about imposters, about medals bought on eBay, about the arrogance of people pretending to be something they weren't. Alexander watched the clock. It was nearing midnight. The door opened and Chief Robert Pruitt stepped in. He was in his 60s, belly sagging under a faded uniform, eyes cloudy with sleep. This says you're a general, he said, holding Alexander's ID. Is that true? Yes. You don't look like one. Neither did Eisenhower. Should I be flattered or insulted? Pruitt frowned. My officers say you were uncooperative. Alexander's tone never shifted. I presented my ID. I asked them to verify it. They refused. They cuffed me, slammed me against my car, and dragged me here. That's not due diligence. That's profiling. Pruitt sighed. I'll make one call. If it's not legit. Put it on speaker, Alexander said. You'll want to hear it. Pruitt hesitated, then placed the call. Department of Defense, a clipped voice answered. This is Lieutenant General Alexander Ramsey, Alexander said clearly. Put me through to Secretary Linford. Now. The line went silent for a second, then clicked. General Ramsey, a voice said, sharp as a blade. Where the hell are you? Greendale, Virginia. Arrested. Being held for impersonating an officer. I need it handled. Put the chief on. Pruitt leaned in. Chief Pruitt. You've arrested a decorated 3-star general. The man who briefed the president last week. Release him now. And Chief? You're going to be answering for this by morning. Pruitt turned red. Yes, ma'am. He waved at Maddox. Get those cuffs off. The keys fumbled. Alexander stood slowly once freed, rolling his wrists. His posture didn't change. He didn't yell. Didn't gloat. He simply said, You didn't fail because you made a mistake. You failed because you saw a black man and couldn't imagine he could be more than your prejudice. And he walked out. By sunrise, the story had spread like wildfire. Video from outside the diner had gone viral. Hashtags lit up. General Ramsey, salute not suspect. Tammy was interviewed on national television. He was respectful. Quiet. They treated him like a criminal. Greendale boiled over. Some locals protested. Some defended the police. But the tide turned quickly. Alexander never asked for attention, but his calm dignity became a symbol. By the end of the week, both Dalton and Maddox were suspended pending federal investigation. Old complaints resurfaced. Body cam footage showed more than one incident with excessive force, profiling, intimidation. Their careers unraveled. The Pentagon launched a probe into racial profiling against uniformed service members. Alexander was called to testify. He stood before a congressional subcommittee, not in uniform, but in a dark suit, his words razor-sharp. This wasn't about me. It was about what people assume when they see a face like mine in a uniform like this. I won't be the last, but I can make sure I'm the last one who walks away quietly. Changes followed. Greendale got a new police chief, Angela Simmons, a no-nonsense former Marine MP from Philadelphia. She rewrote the department's training from the ground up. Community review boards were formed. Bias response protocols became mandatory. Alexander declined every major interview. He returned to Fort Bragg, resumed his duties, mentored younger officers, and quietly continued the work. A few months later, he received a handwritten letter from Tammy. They retrained the whole department. People here remember what you said, not just because of what you wore, but how you stood your ground. Thank you. He kept that letter in his desk. One evening, Lena showed him a painting a local artist had made him, standing outside the diner under the neon light, hands at his sides, chin lifted. It was titled "Valor Isn't Always on the Battlefield." He smiled faintly. They see me now. You were always seen, Lena replied softly. They just caught up. And he remembered what his father had once told him: you don't have to fight every battle. But when you do, make sure the lesson lasts longer than the scar. This one would.